the dungeon, Jinwoo faces off against a steel-fanged lichen. They are having a stare down until the lichen charges. Jinwoo manages to jump out of the way. He is surprised by his new agility. The lichen charges at him again, and Jinwoo boxes the lichen. The lichen keeps coming at Jinwoo, who keeps hitting it with each fist. Jinwoo doesn't think he can do this alone without a party or healer, so he runs, heading towards his bag which holds food and water. He thinks that he needs a weapon and then remembers the inventory which has Mr. Kim's sword. Jinwoo calls up the inventory and pulls out the sword. With one swing, he manages to kill the lichen. He doesn't know how the sword ended up in his inventory, but does comment that it is not something that he could afford. Another 2 lichens appears, and the sword is stuck in the ground from when he struck the first lichen. Jinwoo manages to pull the sword free and takes a swipe at one of the other lichens, but misses. The third lichen catches the blade in its steel fangs. This does not stop Jinwoo, who manages to run the sword through the lichen's jaw and cuts off half its head. The last lichen runs off. Jinwoo sits down to look at his stats. He is now at level 2. He realizes that his stats go up when he levels up in combat. He thinks more on his stats and has decided that strength is the most important one. After some speculations, he comes to the conclusion that the higher his base abilities grow, the more points that he will gain. Jinwoo checks the lichen for essence stones, but instead got items that can be sold in a system store, which he does. Jinwoo thinks it would be best for him to level up before trying to tackle the boss, as he believes he will struggle even if it is an E-rank boss. The lichen comes back and has brought along a few friends. Jinwoo wastes no time in running towards the pack. While he is surrounded by the lichens, he thinks back to when he first found out that he was a hunter, his mum being in hospital, as well as a double dungeon that he just survived. With his new resolve, he takes out the lichens one after another. He levels up after each kill and eventually receives the title Wolf Assassin. Now in the main world, a gate is being kept guard by a soldier as they wait for hunters to arrive to take care of the monsters inside the gate. Meanwhile, Jinwoo is still in the dungeon and all of the lichens are dead. His sword is full of cracks and won't hold up any longer with continued use. A notification comes up which lets Jinwoo know that all his abilities will go up by 40% when fighting animal-type monsters. He checks his inventory and has managed to earn a few items while in the dungeon, including a teleportation stone. He doesn't know what will happen to the dungeon if he uses the teleportation stone and believes that he might not have a chance to go there again. He decides to stay and take on the dungeon boss. Yui is out for a walk and she has a call from the Hunters Association. She apologizes about how she spoke to them before. They tell her that there was a dungeon break at a gate and asks if she would be able to assist as they has a shortage of healers. Meanwhile, Jinwoo is still in the dungeon. He hasn't gone to tackle the boss yet, but is instead focusing on leveling up. He comes across a razor-clawed brigger, which he makes short work of. Jinwoo notices that the color of the text above the monsters has changed. White means they are weaker than him, orange means they are on equal footing as him, and red are that they are stronger than him. The lichens that started off as red when he first came across them are now white. He believes that at his current level he would not be able to take on the dungeon boss. Jinwoo is now at level 15, and despite him not believing he would be strong enough, he heads down the stairs to where the boss resides. He is standing on the platform when the boss, who is moving fast enough through the water, arrives and hits Jinwoo. He hits the wall and his sword is broken. The beast comes back and reveals itself. The dungeon boss is a blue venom-fanged Kasaka. The sword is no use against the snake's scales, but that doesn't stop Jinwoo from trying to pierce the snake with the broken sword. This move doesn't work, and when the snake dives at Jinwoo, he manages to jump out of the way. He ends up in the water and is followed closely behind by the snake, which flings him out of the water before smacking him onto the platform. The snake follows up by throwing a train carriage towards Jinwoo. Jinwoo manages to run out of the way before it lands on him. He gets up and is giving himself a pep talk. He wants to be strong and no longer wants to be the laughingstock. In a flashback, we see Jinwoo being told that people have been calling him the weakest hunter of all mankind behind his back. Mr. Song says that he can't believe how childish people can be. With his new resolve, he vows to get stronger. He is not as scared as when he was in the double dungeon. He tries the broken sword again against the snake, but was still unable to apply any damage. He ends up losing a sword. The snake realizes that Jinwoo was holding onto it, and at the time, Jinwoo applies pressure and squeezes the life out of the snake. Jinwoo has beaten the dungeon boss and has leveled up. He gains Kasaka's Venom Fang Dagger, which has 25 attack power, along with Paralysis, which stops the opponent from moving for a set time, as well as Drain, which reduces their HP by 1% every second. Along with the dagger, Jinwoo received Kasaka's venom gland, which, when taken, will reduce physical damage by 20%, but would damage his muscles and reduce his strength by 35%. As the dungeon boss has been defeated, Jinwoo is transported back to the real world. He heads up the stairs from the station, where he is seen by a soldier who was near the entrance. He asks Jinwoo if he didn't hear the broadcast. He then realizes that Jinwoo is a hunter after he sees the broken sword in Jinwoo's hand. He tells Jinwoo that he will take him to the battle. Jinwoo realizes that there was a dungeon break. The soldier tells him most of the monsters have been dealt with, but there is still one left. With his improved perception, Jinwoo is able to locate the monster. He arrives to the battle and can see that the hunters are struggling to take down the monster. It is too strong for the hunters to handle, as they are all low ranks and the monster is ranked higher than they can handle. When checking out the hunters, Jinwoo sees Juhi on the scene. She panics when she remembers the statue from the double dungeon, which results in her magic fritzing out. Jinwoo says that he can't blame her, as it has only been a week. Jinwoo takes a few steps back and positions his body so that he can throw the sword. Without anyone realizing, he manages to hit the beast and pierce its defenses. This then lets the group of hunters finish it off. One of the hunters knew that something happened, as they had seen the sword hit the beast. He asks who threw the sword, but Jinwoo had already left before anyone could ask him about it. He is surprised that he managed to damage the golem with a single attack and blames it on the golem being weakened. Yuhi calls out his name as she believed that she had just seen him. That's it for this episode's recap of Solo Leveling. And please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next recap.